Hey everybody, welcome to the Yoshi Cast. I'm Yoshi, and we're going to get started going through some comics here while I rebag and board them and get them ready for my organization. So hopefully people join me. If not, this could be a quiet evening. First up is Transformers 43. Let's see here. Well, someone's watching. You want to say hi? It's going good, man. I'm just going through and reorganizing my comic collection here, getting rid of a bunch of duplicates I have. Been doing this for a little bit. Figured I'd stream it so that wasn't doing it alone all the time. How are you doing this evening? I have quite the duplicates. Yeah, I do have a bunch of duplicates. I had to buy a bunch of sets to be able to complete the issues I was missing. So my storage space, my filing cabinet that I use to house all of my comics was getting really tight on space, and I either needed to stop collecting or go through and actually start organizing so that I had some space to continue collecting. So I chose to continue organizing and reduce the duplicates I have. Doing pretty good, taking it easy. That's great. That's a good thing to do on a Friday night. Nerd out with me, and yeah. You know, I actually recently discovered your channel because I was looking for blank cover commission videos, and I really like how you sit down with the artists at the cons and interview 'em. Well, thank you very much. I really enjoy doing that. Um, I'm glad you found that beneficial. I plan to continue doing it. Um, a question to you, since you're somebody outside my circle that's watching my videos. Do you want to see? I mean, obviously, uh, getting more artists, variety is better. But do you want to see any more interviews with existing artists that I've already done, or should I hold off on those and just focus on new artists that I haven't interviewed already? Okay, so I'm looking at getting my first sketch cover commission on an upcoming Amazing Spider-Man #1. That comes out in July. I'm fairly new to the game. Both would be great. Well, dude, congratulations on on getting your first on your first sketch. Do you have a an artist in mind already, or you're just gonna play that one by by ear? And thanks for the feedback. I'll continue interviewing artists that do sketch covers for me, even if I've already done them. And the Spider-Man comic comes out in July, or are you talking about the blank cover from Amazing Spider-Man 800 that just came out, and you're gonna get it commissioned in July? It comes out in July, the whole new reboot with the Marvel again. Yeah. Everybody does reboots, it's not just Marvel. But yeah, man, if, hopefully it's a good looking, blank comic, like, I'm a big stickler about blank comics and how they have to look. Um, I'm a big fan of minimalism when it comes to blank comics. Like, give me the logo, give me the issue number, and don't clutter the book with anything else. So that's pretty exciting, dude. And did you have an artist picked out that you wanted to work on it? I had 2 covers ordered at my local comic shop. One of them I want to be the current artist that will be doing the series. Uh, Mine, Oddly, and the other one I am not sure, to be honest. And do you have in your head what you want them to do as far as a piece? Do you know what you want from them? I don't want the typical web slinging Spider-Man you always see, even though that is his thing. I want him kind of diving, free falling in between buildings with his arms spread. That moment before he starts his web sling. That is pretty cool. Um, That is pretty cool. I haven't seen that before. What I would suggest, not that you asked, but what I would suggest is if you've seen that particular motion or that particular shot you're looking for in a movie or on a comic, screen grab that and print it off. Or if you haven't, if you can, even if it's stick figures, like draw out as best as you can with stick figures and present that to the artist and say, this is what I'm going for. That feeling, that that moment just before he slings onto it. Give an artist as much information as you possibly can. Uh, uh, Communicate. You can't over communicate, especially if you get a hold of the artist before the convention. Um, I'm the type of guy who, if I can get contact information for an artist, I will contact them before a convention, send them an email describing what I want, like any possible question an artist can have regarding art or a sketch cover. Try to just fill that email with everything so that the only thing they have to come back with you is their address to where to send the book so that they can get started before the convention and how much you need to send them to work on it. But if you can't, again, I mean, if you can only, if your only opportunity to meet them is at the convention, then just have your reference art ready and communicate with them as best as you can because you want what you pay for. You want to get what you want, and you want to not feel bad about paying for it. So the more information, the better. Has been what's worked for me. No artist I know has been upset about that. Uh, yeah, that seems like a cool scene if you can get that for sure. Let's see, that is issue 44. There's two. Yeah, I mean, I used to work in computer graphics and I used to do graphic design for people. And no matter um, how clear you are with your words, or over the phone, or in person with somebody, there's still there's still a gap, no matter how small. There's still a gap between what the person is saying they want and what the artist delivers. And one thing I've learned, and I've learned it the hard way, is this artist you're interested in. What was his name? Ryan Otley. Um, he may be a Spider-Man artist, but do you understand what his art looks like? Like I've found with artists that I commission with, like I get familiar with their art if I'm not already extremely familiar. I'll go to their website, I'll look at their portfolio, I'll look at the books they've done, and for me, it's like I know that if I express that I want this, I know he's going to render it out like the way I'm expressing it because I understand his art style. Um, I think that's the biggest thing. Like you can have your that the Spider-Man image you've got where he's about to fling his web and catch on the ceilings. Todd McFarlane is going to render that completely differently than Jim Lee. And these are two well-known artists. Like you can almost see that in your head. Like you're right. I'd get more of a highly detailed suit on Spider-Man with Todd McFarlane, and I feel like Jim Lee is going to give you that presence. You're going to feel like you're in that damn city. that's a bad example, but you get what I'm saying. Like you kind of can see like when you describe that to Jim Lee what he's going to produce, and if you describe that to Todd McFarlane what he's going to produce. So make sure you're familiar with really familiar with Ryan Otley's stuff, so that when you describe him to him, you have a better idea of, even after you describe it, what you're going to get. Cool. I'm glad you're on board with that. Not everything that comes out of my mouth is complete bullshit. Yeah, I love his art. He was the artist on Invincible. Well, good, but you can love like a Todd McFarlane, a Jim Lee, and Alex Ross, but not be aware of what they're going to produce when you describe to them what you want. So yeah, and unfortunately, there's some aspect of the sketch cover, going for the sketch covers thing that you're just gonna have to learn as you go, no matter how much I describe it. I can just try and reduce the road bumps for you. Um, the other thing that'll catch me off guard is like artist attitude. Like, I've bumped into people that have egos. I've bumped into people that are just the nicest people on earth. Um, and just be ready for that. Be ready to cope with if somebody is very curt or very short with you, or if somebody is super nice with you. Just be ready to go with the flow on that. Yeah, good luck, dude. If you get an opportunity, if when this gets done, please, shoot me an email with a photo of it so I can see what it looks like. It sounds really cool. For my other one, I am searching still. I want a rough, sketchy artist, someone like Carmine. Yeah, I'm not even gonna try to pronounce that. But I understand the style, and that's cool. That's very cool. Um, I don't know if you're in a city that does a lot of conventions, or you have the ability to uh, travel to where conventions are. Um, but one thing I do, especially if I've got a couple extra bucks to do it, is I look at the artists that are going to that convention. Are they people I'm interested in? Um, Especially at Emerald City Comic Con last year. Like at one point, I was just taking the artist, Google searching them, looking at their portfolios, seeing if I was interested in them. And that's how I met and interviewed Genevieve Brumall. That was kind of cool. So yeah. Different subject, something I know a lot about. Any new Transformers comics out, I can jump on. Are you at all? Have you read anything in the last what 10 years that's Transformers related? I'm gonna assume no, but I'm gonna wait for your answer. Never read anything Transformers. Okay, all right. Did you watch the original cartoon? I need to know where we're starting at here. Did you watch the original cartoon, or did you watch any of the cartoons like Beast Wars or anything? Where are we starting at here, buddy? Yeah, the original cartoon. Okay. Um, so that's I just started, I don't know what, 2, 3 weeks ago, reorganizing my comics. I'm not even done with Transformers yet. So this is an example of the original Marvel run that came out in the '80s. This is issue 44. It looks like crap on my screen. I hope it looks better on yours. All the Michael Bay movies, if that's any help. Okay. Um, there are, uh, where do we start here? So you can get Where should you God, the first question you're in. You know what? I'd probably tell you not to jump in. Um, uh, IDW, who currently owns the comic book rights to the Transformers, I keep looking at my laptop and not at my webcam. IDW, who owns the comic book rights to the Transformers, is going to reboot the Transformers next year. So free comic book day. Some of the shops may still have this, but free comic book day had issue 0 of Transformers Unicron. This is the first time really Unicron has made an appearance in the IDW Transformers in 10 years. It's like since they took over the Transformers license, like Unicron hasn't made an appearance. He makes an appearance now. He, he's going to come in and do what he does, and then they're going to reboot all the Transformer books. So if you want to just see how everything dies, in soon, your comic book store will carry Transformers Unicron issue 1. On Free Comic Book Day last month, yeah, last month, they had issue 0. You don't need to read it. It was a cool book, but you don't need to read it. I haven't been a fan of what I you got me on a rant, so just feel free to type and tell me to shut up at any point. But um, uh, I haven't been a fan of the IDW Transformers comics, with kind of an exception to, so this original Marvel run that I'm going through ended on issue 80 because they weren't selling enough copies. And put that in perspective, if the last issue of Transformers, which sold, I want to say it was just a hair over 100,000 copies, and they canceled it because that wasn't enough issues, like Batman right now, Superman would be stoked to sell 100,000 issues of a book. So just to put things in perspective. So this went on to issue 80, and that ended in, I think it was 91. I think it finally ended in 91. IDW got the license, and they got the original writer and several of the original artists back together, and they said, you guys didn't get the opportunity to end Transformers the way you wanted. We're going to give you 20 more issues. So there are 20 issues after issue 80 called Transformers Regeneration 1, where the original writer and a bunch of the artists got back together and they did 20 issues, and boom, they concluded the story the way they wanted to conclude it, which is pretty cool. Um, and you got to remember the original 80 run, they were trying to sell toys. Uh, no, you're good. I'm listening. Like I said, I'm new to comics. I'm looking for. Oh, okay. So, like, the original comics were forced to be written to sell the toys that were coming out that month or that year. So up until issue probably 60ish, uh, Hasbro finally wasn't so critical about which characters what, and the writer was able to just actually write really good stories. It's not that things before that weren't good, but you could tell by all the characters coming in and out that it was also to sell toys and not just put a story out there. I like them. Um, I can understand why most people don't, but I really like the books. There are issues in the original run that stick out, that are better, that I like more than others. That would be the case with anything, I would think. Um, let's see. I I don't read a lot of current books myself right now. Um, uh, So if you want to get in on the tail end of IDW, Unicron is a place to jump in at. Next year, there's going to be at least 2 Transformer books starting over, and you can jump in there. Just a fresh, clean slate. Um, I just finished reading, and the last issue came out last week. It was GI Joe versus the $6 Million Man. 4 issues in that series. I really enjoyed it. It takes place in 1983. You recognize the GI Joes. You recognize who the $6 Million Man is. It was a pretty fun little story, honestly. Uh, uh, and that's been a lot of what I've been reading. Comic books that have an end, either 4 or 6 issues, and they call it quits. Another good one I really enjoyed was a He-Man and Thundercats crossover. Um, that's been out for a few months now, and I think the trade is out. So if you just want to pick up the trade and read the story in one sitting, there's that. And a lot of the comic book stores probably still have the issues lying around. Um, but a lot of what I collect now, most of what I collect, and if you've been watching any of my Bagged and Board episodes on YouTube, that's not what this is. But if you've watched any of my Bagged and Board episodes, you'll see that I'm collecting a lot of sketch covers that are nice that I like. They have to be clean, and I'm collecting Punisher, like the original Punisher, and I just started collecting the original Ghost Rider. Uh, Yeah. So a lot of what I'm going to be doing on these live things are just going through my entire collection again, thinning it out, bagging and boarding them properly, and freeing up some space so I can get a few more books. Oh, cool! I'm glad you saw it. I'm glad somebody's watching. I'm glad. um, I get a lot of messages on uh, personally, people who watch it that know me, that have my cell phone number and stuff, who send me feedback that way, which is interesting. Like, just leave it on the YouTube channel. Anyway, I did not mean to do that. These guys go over here. Let's see, what else can I recommend that you read or that you collect? Like, I don't think you can go back wrong with sketch covers, especially if you really like the art. Like, if you know that once a year you're going to go to convention, you're always going to get something done. Like, you can't go wrong with sketch covers. What else? So He-Man versus Thundercats was good. Um, Man, if I don't know if you've seen the movie, but the book, and I would read the book first, but the graphic novel, The Watchmen, like for me, and I mean, it was comic books too, but the comics are pretty pricey. I just own the trade, uh, the trade paperback, and man, I don't know what kept me reading it. That thing was really hard to read through, but the last 12 pages justified all the work I put into trying to read through that thing. It was amazing. It's an amazing story, and hopefully you haven't seen the movie, so you're not going to be too destroyed by it. You're not going to be too spoiled by it. But man, that's a good book. I like the movie too, but the book, man. Who's my favorite Transformer and why? My favorite Transformer is Optimus Prime. Uh, Good old Optimus. I don't know why. Father figure. Uh, Decisive, interesting. I remember I didn't have the toy when I was a kid. I wasn't that lucky. I did have some Transformers, and I always wanted Optimus Prime, but I never had Optimus Prime. But when I watched the cartoon, or I had the Transformers that I do, it was just like the the transforming aspect. Whether I was watching it on TV or in a comic book or on the toy, it just made sense. It just, I don't know, it clicked with that scientific thinking, 8-year-old brain I had. It just clicked, and yeah, I don't know. It's something. I don't know. I never got tired of it. I really really liked it. And you wouldn't, if you picked up an IDW book today, there's even one called Transformers Optimus Prime. If you walked into your comic book store, they've got one on the shelf. I imagine if you're in a decent sized town, you could pick that up and read through it, and you're not going to recognize Optimus Prime. Not visually. Visually, he's pretty kind of like what he used to look like, but he's just indecisive. He questions everything. Every move he needs to make, he questions it. It's not the Transformer I grew up with, so I have a hard time reading that. Dude, I really liked Watchmen. That was recommended to me by a friend, and because that friend is a good friend of mine, I mean, I suffered through trying to read it, and it's mostly because there's a lot of words in it, and I'm dyslexic, so that was just a hard book to get through. But man, the last 12 pages justified it all. I'm so glad I was asked to read that and that I followed through on it. Let's see the X-Men Omnibus. Again, these are issues, but I just own the omnibus of Joss Whedon's X-Men run. You know who Joss Whedon is? He did the first two Avengers movies. He directed them. He created Firefly and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Um, that was a good read. That was a really good read. Um, there's a Batman book. It's a comic, but I have the trade again called what is it? Whatever Happened to the Cape Crusader, written by Neil Gaiman. Really interesting. And then there's a counter to that written by Alan Moore, who also wrote The Watchmen, called "Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow." Really good. Both of them are like, how do they die? How does Superman eventually die? That's Alan Moore's job, and Neil Gaiman's job was how does Batman die? Write it out. And I imagine I'm pretty sure these two were written as endings so that they could reboot Superman and Batman at some point early on. I used to love the X-Men cartoon back in the day. Those were all yes, X-Men cart. There, you know what? You probably can find these in your comic book store because they're not that old. X-Men 94 or 92 or 96. That's the title, X-Men, and it's drawn in the style of the cartoon. It's supposed to take place in the universe of the cartoon. I don't know if it takes place after the very final episode, but that's what it is. It takes place there, which is really cool. I have those. I haven't read them, but I know that they're there because I own them, and the last issue was not too terribly long ago, and I do plan to read them. I have a reading list. I'll get to them. All right, we are moving on to Transformers issue 45. There is, I assume you like the Batman animated cartoon that was out around the same time as the X-Men one. Um, there's a comic book in the same universe, and that comic series, I think it's issue 12 or 13, contains the very first comic book appearance of Harley Quinn. And there are people out there that seek first appearances like nobody's business. Like that's what they collect. They collect first appearances of characters. Yeah. So those, I've read those comics when they came out. I went to my grocery store when those books came out, the Batman animated comics, and I just bought them off the shelf. I read them once, put them in my comic book box. I remember really liking them as a kid. I overheard someone talking about those stories in my comic book store a couple weeks ago. I wasn't talking, I was just overhearing the conversation. They said the stories don't hold up. I don't know if I believe that because I just remember them being really good. Uh, but I really liked that show as a kid. I watched that show constantly. When the comics came out, man, that was just great. but that first appearance, like, so the Batman animated one, uh, you can get those in trades. Um, I feel like all I'm doing is offering you trades, and you want actual comic book issues. As far as I know, to the best of my knowledge and the little research I've done, because I did do a little bit, the those comics, the Batman ones, are still fairly cheap. It's just the Harley Quinn one that's in the between $300 and $500 range right now, depending on who you ask. But you can get those in the trades. Um, so yeah. Like I said, I'm not reading a lot of the stuff that's out right now. I look every week. I look at the what's new. I try to jump on something. Any good story for me? No. Oh, any good story is good for me. Yeah. Okay. Well, Watchmen, I can say for sure. I enjoyed Alan Moore in general, who I mentioned earlier, did uh, Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. You can find in most there's it's rare to run into a comic book store that doesn't carry this, but they've got like issues of Alan Moore that he just wrote, and they've got those in a combined trade. So it'll have a Superman story he wrote, a Green Lantern story he wrote, a Swamp Thing story he wrote. Um, and I think that's what he did is he just did one-offs. He'd jump in and write an issue of Superman, and they collected them, and they're great. They are absolutely great stories. Um, there's a Superman story where he meets the I don't know if they're the Guardians of Oa uh, in the Green Lantern universe. I'm not sure if they're called Guardians or not, but man, they just make sure. I mean, they show you that they impart in Superman like he's not as strong as he thinks he is. He's not in control of this. And if they wanted to, they could end Superman just like that. And it's just like a gut punch of like, man, I'm glad these two are on the same side. So yeah, you can walk into a comic book store and say, "Hey, I want to read some Alan Moore." Um, he did a long run on Swamp Thing. He brought Swamp Thing into popularity. That's for sure. Did Watchmen. He did what is it? League of Distinguished Gentlemen. Uh, yeah. The only indie comic I'm reading right now, besides superheroes, Flash, Sideways, and The Realm, which I love and is amazing. I've seen The Realm. I've wondered about that. The only three books I read plus the Spider-Man that's coming out in July. So it's four recent comics I'm currently. Well, you're more into the current runs of stuff than I am then. I get a little flustered with, especially recently, with all the reboots and stuff. That's probably why I'm like trying to collect the older Punisher, uh, the older Ghost Rider, and that kind of thing. What else have I enjoyed reading? Oh, you know what? I don't know if you're a fan of Firefly, but Joss Whedon, on some level, has had an involvement in the the Firefly comics slash trades that have come out, and I've enjoyed all of them very much. Well, it's been nice talking to you too, man. You have a good night. Thanks for joining me. Take care of yourself, and again, yeah, keep me posted on that sketch cover. I'm genuinely curious. Oh, thanks for wanting to leave a comment for me. I appreciate that. Yeah, the next video will be out. I'm hoping early next week. I got some books, so I just haven't had time to shoot it, and I'm going to. Hold on. Cool. Take care. Have a good night.